let's say you're a vegan. You only take public transport when you absolutely have to, and when you don't take public transport, you either walk or you cycle on your bicycle made of bamboo. You donate frequently to Save the Otter charities, and you pick up 40 kilograms of rubbish every time that you go for a run. You are a hero. You're probably doing more than your fair bit to minimise climate change, and you should indeed be proud of the efforts that you put in to curb your climate impact. But let's now assume that you do none of those things. That you crave meat on the daily, that you drive your car at max RPM, and that the only thing that you recycle is internet memes. But you're an engineer, a bloody great one. By now you've had a crack at solving world hunger, and you've answered mysteries that have left the scientific community dumbfounded. So short of changing your habits or your way of life, surely there is something that you can invent to curb your climate impact. In this project, I wanted to answer, what else could you do? Okay, the idea behind this project is really quite simple. What little individual projects could I put together around the house to minimise mine and my family's climate impact? I think there are a whole bunch of ideas that anyone with a hammer and 2 brain cells could put into action that will hopefully not only curb their climate impact, but will prove a fun challenge. I came up with a bunch of different ideas and decided to act on 3 of them, aiming essentially to complete these 3 mini projects within 2 weeks. My primary metrics were cost, scalability, and effectiveness, because unfortunately one of the main reasons it's so challenging to fight climate change is that it's much cheaper in the short term not to bother. I aimed to build 3 things in this time period: a cheap solar panel and battery bank, a water storage tank to minimise our draw from Maine's water supply, and I wanted to convert my family's 35-year-old rowing machine into an electric generator. And all of the video editing that I'm doing for this project has been powered by the batteries that have been powered by the solar panel. Enough talking, let's roll the film. This is my parents' orangery. This is my cat. And my parents built this orangery so that we could have oranges, and it was designed to be a hot box so that it would get to 30-35 degrees Spanish temperatures in here so that we could grow things like oranges. But A, we don't grow oranges, and B, the things that we do grow are all dead because it gets to 35 degrees in here. All of the energy just comes in and heats up the room and kills the plants and melts all the glues and burns all the surfaces and stuff like that. So let's find a better use for that energy. So in here, it's 42 degrees. I told you it gets hot in here. Yes. That's good. Just don't do anything stupid. So, 12.2. We're cool with that. We were going to mount this on the inside, just up against the window. I thought that would be really, really neat, because then you've got these nice big wooden beams that you could just screw into, and it would be like 2 planks of wood, job done. You can see the reflection of the windows, but you can't see into the windows from the house, and obviously therefore they reflect so much, and that probably explains why the solar panel actually isn't working anywhere near as well inside as it should be outside. So I think I'm gonna have to mount this on the outside. We can have it at that angle, so it's in line with the roof, maybe for the summer where the sun is maybe a little bit more at that side, and then we'll have it on a tilter, for now manual, but eventually an automatic tilter, and we can pitch it up more and more, so it could almost go against this and face the sun even more. Right. They don't really fit in the room. They're big. Look, because you've passed under my barrier of wood. Let's go. Let's go. No, come on. It's teamwork. Come on. Ow. Come on. It feels strong enough. I expected to go away for the weekend and come back and the solar panel would have fallen over, the frame would have completely dismantled or rotted away, or the screws would have come loose, it would have swung round, it would have ripped the battery through the top glass pane, the solar panel would have smashed onto the bottom glass, and basically have come back to a mess and a very expensive build. But I'm actually very pleasantly surprised, let's move this little tripod thing, that you can just about, there you go, look at that, it's still standing! That's not bad. I'm actually quite happy with that. I know it's just a wooden frame, but I've made a thing that hasn't, I'm probably still very zoomed in, I've made a thing that hasn't completely just fallen to parts, and I'm very happy with that. I'm genuinely very happy with that. I'm sounding silly, but I actually am very surprisingly happy with that. And of course, I've just told you all about the solar panel plans and raved about how hot it gets in here. And of course, it started tipping it down outside, as is typical of British weather. Trust me, we get a lot of sun sometimes too, and it does get hot in here. But this is a good example. This is a good example of why we want to build a water butt. 250 quid, 300 litre, 200 bloody quid. 360 quid. I mean, even the cheap one here, 150 quid. I could definitely build it for less than that. I'm just going to build my own. So we're picking up our barrels for the water tank at this here lovely recycling facility, and it goes up just from here. It goes for a very long way. It's a very big place. It's clothes and stuff. Now I'm not allowed out of the car apparently because I'm not wearing high vis. So all of this filming comes from a very beautiful Renault Clio. There you go. We've now got a Renault Clio filled with barrels. One. I don't think that's going to go anywhere. I'll double check in a sec. Originally this part fell off. So the solution to that is more glue. Lots more glue. That's about 4 glue sticks. You know, it's like, okay, maybe it was about 5 or 6 glue sticks. It was many glue sticks, but now it's, I don't know, it might fall off, but oh well. We need to get all this paint off and then have a rough surface, so that when we stick down the wood plats, they'll stick properly. Otherwise they'll tear up like this did. So the water butt is gonna go here, and there are some things in the way, namely wood, a little bit of scrap, and then a nice big container filled with water. And conveniently, the tap for this container filled with water is at the top. I don't know who designed it. I don't know if there's a purpose for that. Maybe that's an inflow, not an outflow. I don't know. But it now weighs a literal ton. So it's going to take a bit of effort to clean it out, or empty it I should say, by hand. We're just going to try the old cycle instead. Ta-da! Look at that. So I'm half tempted to leave this on a time lapse to just. Yeah. But that's really interesting. Though, it's not very interesting. It's literally it's the opposite of watching paint dry. Yeah. So no. Hose and all the fittings that we need to attach. This hose here is for the side so that we can always see the water level. So the next thing to do is just attach it. Now to mount this clear hose, I've printed off a whole bunch of these, and these, in theory, just clip onto the hose and sort of keep it in place like that. But they broke because PLA is brittle and I didn't print them very well. But I'm hoping that now that I've sort of threaded them, I don't know if you can see down the hole there, but I've threaded them, so with some of these bolts, we should be fine, sort of just clamping it. There's our little tap, so we've got, see there's no water in it at the minute, but that would be water out, that would be stop water. Pipe coming in from there, so we've got all of that water. It's going to go into there and then fill up our tanks. Now we just need to close off that hole, and I've got a very silly temporary idea for that as well, as always, and we're done. I give you one fully functioning water tower with running water. Ta-da! Okay, a crazy thought just hit me. I was just doing a row on the rowing machine, and I burned 375 calories. And while I've been on the rowing machine, I've been charging up my phone with a battery bank. But 375 calories is something like 400 watt hours. And my phone has 13.5 watt hours of energy in its battery. I've basically produced or burnt enough energy to power my phone 30 or so times to harness that energy that I've just burnt, which was normally in the form of air or resistance or friction. Find a way to harness that and charge up one of these, or better yet, charge up my phone. I won't need one of these, I could charge up my phone instead, and it would only have to be 6, 7, 8% efficient to get the energy out of me into the phone in order to completely charge my phone in the 26 minutes of rowing that I just did. I want to have a gear all the way around the outside on this rim here, so I can shove my motor there, so that when this guy spins, it turns the gear, it turns the gear, it turns the motor, I generate power. We're going to need to make a lot of parts. I wonder if I can borrow a 3D printer from someone. That, if I'm honest, Matt, could be a lot worse. I think I've done this perfectly. I've put in a whole bunch of circles compared to this, and the logic behind all these circles, I'm hoping, is that because this warps because it contracts, because it's a hot plastic, and then as it cools down, it contracts, but certain layers can't contract at the same rate. So you want to keep the room hotter, which I'm doing at the minute, but also, hopefully with all these holes, it will contract less and more evenly, is my hope. The thing I know I need to be able to do is somehow control the, essentially the radial distance of the motor to the outer ring. Because if I make something a millimeter too small, then it will just be a millimeter, and it'll just glide over the top. And if I make something that's too close, well, I won't be able to get it on, and you get, very, very strong, stiff forces that will ultimately break stuff. So you need a way of being able to essentially tweak it and slide it into the perfect position. Like a thread would do that really, really well. If I could do a bolt that when you turn the bolt, it just brings it ever so slightly outwards. A worrying thing is it does say not suitable for children under 3 years. I'm just going to lie and say that I'm over 3 years mentally. Oh, bollocks. No, I want a I want a... Right. Let's try it again. Did it at least get a light on it? No. No? Oh. I think I broke it. Did it work? No. Oh. I thought that was going to work. I'm actually quite upset with that. I should make this all a little bit bigger internally so that I would need this and it could be shut down properly.
Well, couldn't we stick a small screw in?
Yes, I mean, if we wanted to, we could screw it into this. My point was I didn't want to at any point. Yeah. I mean, I've scratched it and stuff like that. I don't think this was me, but I've scratched this, but I've not changed the rowing machine at all. Yeah. I'm basically butting up against the last day of the project, and I've got 2 more days just of 3D printing to do. For 3 days. And I don't really have an issue with presenting this as a failed part of the project, because the whole point of this is to inspire people to do stuff. It's like, cool, we've gone through, this is how it's failed, these are the failure mechanisms, this is why it doesn't work. And maybe in the next few weeks, I will reprint this and remake it, but I won't do it on a rushed schedule. I'll make it, and then when it works, and the final video, I could do the whole sort of, I went and remade it anyway, but outside of the 2-week deadlines, and I eventually did get it working, and here's it working, but I didn't get it working in the 2 weeks, so just a disclaimer. Yeah. I've made a few enhancements to my design. And in the process, I think I've also broken stuff, but we'll talk about that in a second. How are these people ruling the tech world right now when they do shit like this? So we're going to test it. So this guy, this outer ring spins because the flywheel spins because I do the pulley on the rowing machine, which turns this gear, which turns this motor. What this motor then does is it sends out power, because it can work in reverse essentially as a generator, to this unit. What this unit does is it steps it down to 12.5 volts. The reason it steps this down to 12.5 volts is because this then goes into this battery as well as into this little thing down here. We'll charge up the battery to 12.5 volts. This acts as a buffer because if this does work, which it probably won't, but if this does work, in theory I'm going to be charging at a faster rate than my phone can possibly take, or that this device can possibly take, which I'll talk about in a sec. So this acts as like a little buffer, basically a secondary flywheel, as it were. It also means that we can charge this up over 25 minutes, but then my phone, which will take an hour and a half to charge, I can just leave this plugged into the battery once I've charged up the battery. With me so far. So that's basically from there to the battery. Again, this kicks out 12.5 volts. This 12.5 volts also goes into this little box down here, and what this does is it steps it down from 12.5 volts to 5 volt USB. So that 5 volt USB is powered through this USB cable into this little Xbox battery here. We'll know that it's charging if that green light comes on. Because if that green light comes on, it means that it's charging. There are loads of ways that we could test this. I have very few brain cells left, so I'm just going to see if it works. So if this works, I'm going to be so happy. No, that's not talking about. This isn't working either. Why aren't you working? Is it just because I'm not rowing you hard enough? I'll give it some welly. Let's close those fans up, make it easier for myself. Not that we're approaching aerodynamics at this point. Any lights? So that didn't work as well as I was expecting it to. Now onto the results, and then you can stop watching the video and you can go home, or you can do whatever you were doing before. So the way that I want to do this, again at the very beginning of the video I said that there are 3 primary metrics that I was going to look at: cost, scalability and effectiveness. So the way that I'm going to do cost is basically I'm going to compare the solution that I came up with to the conventional solution that might already exist out there, if one already exists out there. So, for example, for the solar panel mount and battery, so it was old material, it was free for me. You could probably pick it up on Gumtree, Free Cycle, or from like a scrapyard, pretty cheap. Compare that to a solar panel mount that I found online, which was about £30 to £45, way cheaper to make it than it was to buy it. In terms of the batteries, I used 2 old car batteries. I bought an inverter online that was £35, maybe £100 in total, £150 if you account for the cost of the solar panel as well. Compare that to a Tesla Powerwall. A Tesla Powerwall is about 1.6 watt hours per pound. This ended up being close to 16 watt hours per pound, so it's about 10 times cheaper per watt hour. Quite frankly, I couldn't have made it much cheaper than it already was. So I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. The water storage butt, we saw some at the beginning of the video, and they were like 250 quid, which is a lot of money. Do you know those barrels? They were £10 each. I bought 3, but I actually only used 2. The PVC piping was about 20 quid. The wood, again, was free because it was just oak that we'd ripped up from old floors. That entire project cost about 50 to 60 quid. I'm going to give that maybe a 7 or 8. The rowing machine was an old rowing machine that we've had lying around that we still use. It still works perfectly, but it is about 30 years old. But the reason I'm especially confident with calling the rowing machine itself free was because you could do this to a bicycle that you can get free online really easily. The expensive bits were the motor and the electronics. Again, the battery was just ripped out from an old car, but the motor and the electronics together, that was about £70. And then all the 3D printed parts together used about 1.5 spools of filament. That was about £45 in total. The entire project in total cost over £100. There aren't many hand-powered or human-powered, man-powered generators that I could find, but the ones that I could find were as little as 200, 250 quid. So actually for cost, I'm only going to give this about a 5 because it was cheaper, but it wasn't that much cheaper. Scalability, the solar panel. The mount that I've built is actually very strong, very big. I could probably shove on twice as many solar panels or twice the size solar panel on that. So I'd say that's scalable. So the way that I'm really judging scalability is like the economies of scale. How much additional infrastructure do you have to put in place to say to double the throughput? If you wanted to double the capacity, you buy an extra battery, you get another battery. But you don't have to buy another solar panel, another mount, another inverter, and extra wires. Really, you just have to get another battery. So that's actually quite scalable. I'm going to give that a 7 or an 8 as well. I'll give that let's give that an 8 as well. Now, the water storage container. That really isn't scalable because the maximum height that you can get to is the gutter height. Because obviously, if it's any higher, then the water doesn't flow from the gutter into the storage. And so the only other option is to go sideways. So basically have a second water tower beside it. But you've still got to buy fittings, PVC piping, get all the oak for it as well, all the wood that you're going to use as supporting structure, and buy the additional barrels, and make as many cuts. Yeah, you could maybe save on brass fittings by only having one outlet, and just, but you still need extra PVC piping and all that sort of thing. So that really isn't very scalable. If you wanted to double your capacity or throughput on that, you'd have to buy twice as much stuff, which is why it's not, by definition, scalable. The reason I'm not giving it a 0 is because you can reuse some of the pipe work, you can reuse some of the holes and stuff like that, but you'd have to do a lot of it again. So a nice low 3 or 4 out of 10 for that. But let's say 3. Now, the way that I'm going to do scalability for the rowing machine, you could just choose to row for longer. That's very, very capable. That's very easy to do. I'm actually, electronically wise, I wasn't hitting the maximum throughput, or the maximum power rating for any of the electronics on board. Then it can output around about maybe 200 to 300 kilowatts, and me rowing at a constant pace would be around about 150 to 200 kilowatts. But again, if we wanted to charge twice as many phones, we would just have to row for twice as long. But we wouldn't need to increase any of the capacity of the stuff upstairs because we're not limited by the motor, we're not limited by the electronics. It's limited by man, it's limited by me. I'm going to say that it was actually really scalable because I just need to row for longer, and then you can charge more stuff for longer. I'm going to give that 9 for scalability. Finally, effectiveness. How well does it slot in or reduce your dependency on the main supply that you're after? How well does it slow down your climate impact? For the solar panel, all of the video editing and all of the video production for this video has been powered by the solar panel via the battery, running completely off solar, which I think is really, really cool. So it's been really, really effective. I'm going to give that maybe another 8. The water storage. This is a weird one because it's really effective at times and it's really ineffective at times. When it's completely full, we can water plants at the top of the garden because our garden's on a slope. But when it's close to empty, you can't really water much in the garden at all. So you have to go for like a watering can instead, which works quite well. It's got great storage. It's got something like 450 litres of water storage, which is more than enough to do this whole quite large garden a couple times. So in the summer, this will actually be really, really useful. I'm going to give this a 5 because it's effective at storing, but it's not terribly effective at delivering. The rowing machine. There's no two ways around it. It didn't work. I tried multiple times. I tried multiple different sort of iterations of parts. I lubed the absolute pants off it and it still wouldn't work. So unfortunately, that's a 0. I didn't produce, I think, a watt of energy. So coming in first, solar panel mount. Coming in second is the water storage, and coming in last is the rowing machine generator, and that just didn't work. So there you go. If you're already a vegan and you cycle everywhere on your bamboo bicycle and you donate to charities that save dolphins and otters and whales and polar bears and stuff, and you pick up rubbish, or if you're a scumbag and you do none of those things, and you can't decide what else you can do to help the planet, at the very least, you could probably build a solar panel mount and battery holder and do all of your video editing and video production from the energy from the solar panel. Covered in cobwebs. Dead, 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 dying, dead, dying, dead, dead, dying, dead, 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 dead. I've run out of things to say. Right, I'm just gonna have to leave it at that.